Good morning everyone, today's a discussion video about gear progression and character progression, but before we jump into the video, if you're new to the channel, I upload NGS content daily, so if you do play this game, I would really appreciate a subscribe as it really helps out the channel. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin the video. So recently I watched the Diablo 4 developer interview where they were talking about how Diablo 4 is going and like how they're making the game and just general information about Diablo 4. The reason for this is because I am a very big fan of Diablo 2, and so I am looking forward to Diablo 4 as they did say that they're going back to their roots instead of like the cartoony bright color version of Diablo 3. They're going back to the nitty gritty gory type of Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. So I'm actually really happy about that because, you know, Diablo 2 is definitely my jam. But they talked about something really interesting in this developer interview. I will leave the video link in the description below in case you want to watch the entire interview yourself. But they talk about gear progression in the sense of why they have all of these different world tiers. So basically, as you all know, when we play Diablo, you've got like your normal, then nightmare, then hell, and then in Diablo 3 you had like the different torment levels. And the importance of that is because eventually you get too powerful for whatever difficulty you're playing at and it becomes too easy. So the progression cycle begins with you're underpowered, you're struggling, you're really trying to just get better gear, get new gear so that you can get into that sweet spot. Then you finally get that rare drop or you finally get that gear or that big upgrade and you're in that sweet spot where you're like, oh, this feels good. You're farming enemies efficiently and you feel good and like the loot is still good, the EXP, the money, everything is still good. So that is the sweet spot. But eventually over time you become overpowered because you've got all of this really powerful gear that you farmed up or that you've upgraded, and that difficulty is too easy for you and the drops aren't as worth it because you're a lot stronger and you don't really need all of these useless items. Even the most rare items that drop there aren't that valuable. And this is when Diablo system kicks in where it's like, okay, you should go up to the next difficulty. And then you go up into nightmare mode, for example, in Diablo 2. Everything just super hard again and everything just totally whoops your butt and you feel like you've degraded back into your initial position where you're struggling to get good gear, and then you finally get that one rare drop or that one big upgrade and you get that huge adrenaline rush of like, oh my goodness, I'm finally powerful again. Then you flow back into the sweet spot where you're killing mobs efficiently again, and then eventually you get into the overpowered phase and then you go to the next difficulty. And so in the interview they talk about the Diablo formula, which is essentially what I just told you. You start from underpowered to the sweet spot to overpowered, and then they reset and you go over the cycle over and over again, because the feel good moments in Diablo is when you get those rare drops and when you're farming in that sweet spot. And so I was thinking, hey, NGS kind of needs that. Right now in NGS, we go from underpowered to overpowered in a matter of hours. I personally think that's a little bit too fast. I want to enjoy that sweet spot moment a little bit more, not just for 30 minutes or 40 minutes and then boom, immediately I get that big upgrade and I'm suddenly overpowered. Because as much as it is fun being super overpowered, it gets very boring very quickly. So let's say that you're super overpowered, you go to a combat zone, you're like 3-shotting all the mobs and you're just grinding there indefinitely. I feel like a lot of people get very bored of combat zone farming because you're just doing the same thing over and over again, and it's just very brain dead easy content because you're so powerful. And so I was thinking about, how does the NGS team balance combat zones to make it a little bit more challenging for people who are geared, but also not totally destroy or gimp people who are still progressing. And something they recently added into Diablo 2 was the terrorized zones. And this was super duper fun because basically what the terrorized zones were these special zones which rotate on the hour that buff all the monsters in that specific zone, but as a return you get better drop rates, you get more loot, you get more EXP, more gold. And so I really like that idea. I'd like to see NGS implement something similar to that in combat zones, where every hour a different combat zone would get high photon density or something, where all the mobs there become a lot stronger. Maybe they're all level 65, maybe they're all elite enemies. It doesn't matter how they want to implement it. I just want all the mobs there to be a lot stronger. But the benefits is you get more Meseta, you get more rare drop rate, you get more EXP, but the cherry on top of that is the fixa drop rate is going to be higher. We already know that this this is possible because later in November, we actually have an event where we're getting a 150% increased chance of getting fixer drops. So I'd like to see them implement that into these high photon density combat zones, which rotate every hour. That way people don't get bored of farming Retem al-Noth all day, because that's not going to be the most efficient way to farm anymore. The most efficient way to farm is going to be follow all of these high density combat zones in order to gain the most amount of Meseta, EXP, as well as rare drop rate, and of course the high level fixers. I feel like this would add that little spice of variety into your combat zone farming. So instead of just farming the same old place over and over and over again, there's actually a little bit more variance and change of scenery, so you're not farming in the same old place all the time. And on top of all of this, maybe add in some special mobs that only spawn in terrorized zones, which drop rare capsules, which a lot of people want, such as Mastery 4, for example. Make them drop the capsules that a lot of people actually want, so it would encourage people to be like, hey man, you should gear up and get as strong as you can so that you can go into these high photon density zones in order to farm efficiently and effectively there, and thus you have that gameplay cycle. Now, if the NGS team wants to make this even more complex, maybe add different ranks on top of these high photon density zones. So let's say that, you know, the rank 1 version, all the mobs are level 60. The rank 2 version, all the mobs are level 65 or something. So it adds a little bit more variety and encourages people to gear up more often and to constantly be on that gear chase in order to get the best in slot weapons as well as armors, because at the current state of the game, there's no real need for people to gear chase, which is fine for the majority of the players. However, you do need to cater to your hardcore player base to some extent to give them a reason why they should be putting all of these super high endgame capsules onto these endgame gear, and why should they constantly be on this gear grind to try to get the best in slot equipment. There needs to be a reason. And adding in this high photon density combat zone or this special combat zone could be a solution. But let me know in the comment section below what you guys think.
Special thanks to all the members for supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me. Thank you again.
But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover in today's video. Hopefully you guys found it interesting. If you did, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye.
What can I say except you're welcome, for the heels